I am resident of Collinwood for YouTube, and joining me here tonight, author of the Dark Shadows Daybook, Patrick McCray. We're
You're
here to
hello.
we're, we're here to discuss Caleb Sayers Collins, and Caleb Sayers Collins was the last person to ever live in the Seaview house. He had made a very strange rule that no one could live in the house until 1972. I was wrong about the year, by the way. I had said 71, so I apologize. But he had made a
And
very
again,
strange rule.
the Dark Shadows police are after you.
Yeah, they're going to book me hard, man. But he made a very strange rule that no one could live in the house until 1972. And and really, the first time we really hear about this is when Burt Devlin, by this time, is played by Anthony George, and Victoria Winters, still played by Alexander Moltke Isles, is he's wanting to buy the house for Vicky, and even Elizabeth is perplexed by this rule. She can't change it, she can't do nothing about it, and it's not just for strangers either. It's not just like they can't buy the house. No one could buy the house, not even a family member. No one could live in it. And I find this, first of all, look, there's a lot of secrets in the Collins family, right? Okay, this is Judith's, Edward's, and Quentin's uncle. Okay,
Jeffrey.
Yeah, Jeff.
Jeffrey was their brother, who is the father of Edward and Judith and
Yep.
all of that. And then they had a younger brother, Jonah, who died very young.
So he lives in this guy, Caleb, lives in this house, and he's the last person to do so. And it makes me go, why this rule? And I'm going to tell you this. I have two theories. Number one,
And I'll give you mine.
I want to hear it. Number one, either A, Caleb was experimenting in time travel, and
Okay.
he was a scientist, and that
Okay.
house could move through time, which Vicky sort of hints at with the schooner.
Yeah.
She's like, but I have another sickening theory for you, and this is sinister as hell. Caleb Sayers Collins did not trust any member of the Collins family. You've
Because he,
you you've talked about Leviathan.
yeah.
I think he was a disciple of Judah. And
Ah, the other side of the fence, huh?
right, we've heard about Hatfields and McCoys. Well, what if there were two sides to the Collins family that this guy, hey, there's something up with my family here. Something's not right, right?
Smooth.
Yeah.
Like it. Yeah. Yeah. That wraps it up. So about Benjamin Sisko.
Yeah.
No, I think that's a marvelous theory. It's it's one of these side eddies that I the I think if the show had continued, they
Right.
would have had to have picked up on. A, because it would have given them a new reason to have some new sets and things like that, and kind of have a because it's 100 years later, and one of Caleb's kids shows up, you
Right.
know, ready to take the house. So I think that's marvelous, and I think playing a Leviathan versus Judah Zachary uh, kind of storyline gives them something both rooted in Dark Shadows mythology and yet fresh
Right.
to go in. I think that he was uh, a master of the culinary arts, and that he had been working very heavily in new innovations with cabbage, beans, and things like that. And the gastrointestinal results of what he did were so horrific that he knew that for 100 years, it's like when you try and buy a house from people of other lands who have very pungent foods. It's in the walls, you know. Tikka masala in the walls. And I happen to like Indian food, so I actively look for these homes. But you know, I'm it in Knoxville because, you know, anything more than a speck of pepper, they're not going to pay any attention to. But anyway, I think what happened to him was so mind-boggling that it was uninhabitable for that time. And I think he in fact had to change his name to Taggart, and he moved out west and became the Slim Pickens character in Blazing Saddles, where they say, "Do you want more beans, Mr. Taggart?" And he says, "Sheesh, I think you've had enough." That's what I call a big finish. The other thing about that big, well, there's some teeth jokes I have coming up. But anyway, I think your theory sounds perfectly credible. Mine's more interesting from the special effects department and from the sound effects department. You know, but that's it. I think I effectively killed the topic. I'm sorry. Back to Caleb. Back to Caleb Collins, the dark master of beams of Collinsport. The thunder that was heard coming out of that house drowned out even the sound of the crashing waves of the sea.
Yeah. I think that's the thing too. Like,
play it off. Yeah. Okay. Continue.
I think that's the thing too. Here's this guy. It's one thing. Look, we know the Collins family is paranoid of strangers and all that, right? He's not alone in that at that art. But to seriously just not even Liz, not Carolyn. Like if Carolyn wanted to buy that, she couldn't do it. If anybody of that family wanted to buy that house, they can't do it till 1972. So this rule he lays at the feet is not just for strangers, it's for anybody, even the family. It lets me know this guy didn't even trust his own family. Sure. And then it goes, okay, Barnabas, Burke, Vicky, all go in that house. They're the only three we ever see in that house. Barnabas finds a handkerchief and nothing else. So it makes me think a couple things. One,
have the boys in the lab check this one out. Continue.
One, not only does the house move through time, but the objects in it do. And that could be a possibility. I don't know if you've ever seen.
Would leave a handkerchief like this.
Right. Exactly. Right.
What do we conclude? The ghost had a cold. The ghost cold. Is it embroidered? Was the handkerchief embroidered?
I don't know. The ghost. Listen.
Like weird handkerchiefs he finds around Collinsport. He's got them all over the walls in plastic bags, and every night before he goes to bed, ooh, witch hazel, and puts it back up on the wall. This is a secret life of Barnabas Collins. Continue.
So, I don't know if you've ever seen Howl's Moving Castle.
I have not.
Okay, Howl's Moving Castle is a Studio Ghibli movie.
Yeah, it's a Miyazaki.
Right.
Yeah.
So the castle can move because of magic. I think that's sort of like, I think partially that's partially Caleb's house, but instead of moving literally into another place, it moves through time, and so do the things in it. But there's other things in it too that are secretive that you don't find. That's why Barnabas only finds that handkerchief, because the things in it go through time or dimension, sort of like the Twilight Zone in a way. I do think there's something here in this house. I don't know what. Now, if
maybe
what's that?
Yeah, maybe some socks. He's got a handkerchief, socks. He's gonna find an ascot, a belt. If he's going back to the house, he'll have a whole ensemble.
Jimmy,
over.
Jimmy Hoffa's body. Oh my god. Oh my god. At this rate, they're gonna find Hoffa's body in Caleb's house. That's what that is.
Cousin Eddie outside telling him the shitter's full, and like emptying it out. It's going to be Randy Quaid, who believes in all sorts of weirdness. Randy Collins, who I believe starred in a number of films for Falcon, but that's neither here nor there. Yeah, that's what I mean. Sure, the house moves through time. I mean, all houses move through time. They just do it very slowly.
Right.
But so is it like, you go into the house and you come out and it's 1972 or something like that?
No, I don't think it's quite that simple. I think Victoria says she saw a schooner, right?
Yeah.
I think the house is, if you sort of remember when Barnabas stands in the parallel time room and it finally changes. I think there's sort of something like that, but more complex in that house.
Okay.
Where
Okay.
if you stood in that house at a certain point, something would, maybe it's not just one room, maybe it is a certain room, maybe it isn't, and maybe it just changes to a certain time, maybe even another dimension. I don't know, and that's something that's always perplexed me with this house. I do agree with you. If the series would have continued, it would have been interesting to see where they would have took this, because it would have been 1972. Like,
Yeah.
if a descendant of Caleb shows up and claims the house, like if somebody finally goes to move into, let's say Carolyn, for example, Nancy Barrett goes, Mom, I'll buy the house. It's up for sale finally. And then finally a living descendant of Caleb shows up and goes, nope, I've got the rights to that house by name. And they're like, and they can't fight it,
The slap fight.
There could be a cat fight if it's a woman, right?
Your great grandfather could walk. Lied to everybody, but we know, we saw the tapes. He killed Daniel too. He was a mean man, and he had that. That's where they should find the squeeze ball. Remember that squeeze ball, that exercise ball that Gabriel had?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
this at Walgreens around 1998. Yeah, which is where Gabriel was shopping.
Gabriel's squeeze ball ends up in Caleb's house. Why not? Right?
That's the relic. Yeah. David's been sneaking over there and using it for impure purposes.
he's been using a lot of things for impure purposes.
Oh, man, you're making leaps of logic. I'm trying to talk about fact. Making it up. You're just keep going. I'm enjoying
it. Gabriel, who can walk, who can get out of his chair and choke the life out of somebody who's been squeezing that little ball squeezing the ball so hard, and he's been picturing people's throats while doing it. Hey.
But he has a good mustache, so.
Yes, he does. Yes, he does. God bless you, Christopher Penn. God bless you, sir. I mean, that's just, what a character.
Now, was the house built so that Gabriel could move around in it?
That's a great question. I think yes. I think he built the house. That's something that doesn't really get touched upon, I don't believe, in the original DS. But he did, because if you own a house, if you're putting in the clause and the stipulation of it, you have had to have built this house. I think this because he's the last person to live in it. I think he's the one who built it, and he's the one that caused it to be able to do what it could do. Now, is he a disciple of Judah? I do think there is a flip side to to him. Because
Okay.
if you're laying a rule that not even your own family can own this house till 72, it lets me know you didn't trust them because you were suspectful of them of doing what?
They would have found his fire pole upstairs. He had an elevator to get up, but somehow a fire pole to get down. Just like Hugh Hefner at the original mansion, as described by Catherine Lee Scott.
Really?
I don't know, but she wrote a book about, the early days of Playboy and all of that. So I assume the fire pole came in there at some point.
I've never read it.
It's a good book.
I'll have to check it out. But I think that once he builds this house and starts making sure that it can do what it can do, move through time, whatever, he implements this rule because you know what? I don't trust one member of my family. They're shady as shit. And they
Well, he
are.
Dark Shadows. Of course you don't trust a Collins. That's like the first thing. No, their name is Collins. Don't trust them. But I'm a Collins. Exactly. This has become like a video game, and you're the hero, and I'm like the boss fight, and you're just trying to get through this topic, and I'm throwing every tangent I can. I'm gonna get a live cat and throw it at you in a minute. Keep going.
Just go, just just go get the face hugger from Alien Dog. I'll be done.
I want some salad. Yeah. John Hurt. So John Hurt, the war doctor, and a doctor played a guy possessed by Caleb Collins in was Happy Endings Audio, Big Finish Audio.
Cool. If you could cast somebody as Caleb, who would you cast?
Okay, so we got to set some ground rules here. Are we talking about from the general Dark Shadows ensemble of the period in which the show would have been done? Are we talking about now, or are we talking about any period in time?
All of the above, my friend.
Okay. So, well, you've got to get somebody kind of thin and blonde. So Dana Elcar. But seriously, you got to because he's the kid of Edith,
right,
and of Chris Pennock. So flashback, depending on when you did it, it's a perfect part for David Hennessy around the age of 17 or 18.
Yeah.
So that's right there. That's a good one. There's an actor I like named Frank Ashmore who was on V. Do you remember V?
I remember Robert Englund in V.
Yeah, well, Robert Englund.
Yeah.
He's
yeah.
Cast Robert Englund back then as Caleb Collins. He would have been fun. It depends on what sort of character you want to make Caleb Collins. If you want to make him kind of a dashing romantic type, right, then that's one path. If you're gonna have, just some guy, Tom Hopper would have been good because he played Grimes, right? He played Mordecai Grimes' kid in 1840. So he's a decent, young member of the ensemble to bring in. Because you're dealing with kind of this jump in time, because I assume you'd be doing it around 1872, would be it. I think of actors that kind of had lined up. Gene Lindsay, bring Gene back, give him a mullet or something so they don't recognize him. Those, I like those actors from that later era of the show from 1840 because it's clear that Dan is kind of trying to build the ensemble of the typical Dan Curtis type, which is a tall, dark-haired, kind of baritone figure. And that, because you've got Tom Hopper, you've got Gene Lindsay, and you've got who played Morgan Collins?
I'm not sure. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Yeah. I know his name like that. Keith Prentice. Keith
Okay.
Prentice. So, I mean, to me, they're the obvious examples. They're the guys who, if we had come back to the 20th century after 1841, parallel time, would have been playing something. Would have playing, one of these, some new Collins figure. They to me seem to be next in line.
I tell you who I would have went with for Caleb.
Okay.
Peter Fonda.
Oh, so you're thinking big canvas.
Yes.
Oh, well, yeah, Peter Fonda really has a Dark Shadows quality to him. Sure, Peter Fonda.
And I think he would have did the mystique well, would have came across really credible, and just
marvelous choice, Jewel. That's great.
I don't love the movie Easy Rider, but I love a lot of his other stuff. Mm-hmm. But I think he would have been a great Caleb. Like he would have. Yeah. I'll put in a disclaimer because there's people who know me know that my favorite actor is his dad, Henry. Yes.
Okay. Then how do you feel about Roger Davis's sort of Henry Fonda voice? Or do you know that?
Yeah, I do. And here's the thing. When I watch Roger Davis, and I'm not taking anything. When I watch Roger Davis, Henry Fonda, Peter Fonda, when I watch Roger Davis as Jeff Clark or this or that, and I'm not saying he doesn't somewhat sound like Henry Fonda, but there's times I hear Henry and there's times I don't.
Yeah.
In my view, if you disagree, please do.
When you say you hear him, you don't hear him when you turn on the radio and he doesn't ask you to get him. Right. Right. We're not going there. It's not like a Brian Wilson thing. Okay, good. Wherever there's a Leviathan, I'll be there. Anyway.
Yeah, but I would have loved to have seen Peter as Caleb, Peter Fonda, as Caleb. Now for today, if they did it and I'm not trying to pick a big name, but somebody maybe later on, or if you wanted to cast somebody who was another child actor who I thought I loved but Kurt Russell would have been smart.
Oh yeah, I thought you were going to say Todd Bridges, so I'm really relieved.
No, Kurt. A lot of people forget Kurt was a child actor. First and foremost.
Boy on Gilligan's Island. Yeah. He was the computer who wore tennis shoes. I think he did one with a monkey also.
Yeah. He was fabulous in John Carpenter's Elvis, by the way, if you've never seen it.
I have indeed. And I wrote a number of comic books about Elvis, and one of them is this alternate universe thing called Elvis Shrugged that had to do with Elvis faking his death and doing all sorts of stuff in 1997. And if it had ever gone to Hollywood, Kurt Russell is the guy I wanted to play the older Elvis because he was older. Elvis was older.
Patrick, can I ask you a question, man?
Sure.
I asked this question on my Dark Shadows discussion group. Who would you cast as Mr. Best? And I'm going to tell you straight up who I would cast, okay? As Mr. Best. I would cast you.
Me?
Yes.
As Mr. Best?
Yes.
Why?
You have a voice. When I hear Mr. Best, I hear your voice.
He's the death guy. He's the stopping over place or the over room or what's it called? The resting stop or the in between what's the name of his place?
I forget, but I love the room, and he has this beautiful little room, and he's just standing there. See, I could see you just sitting there. Welcome to my parlor, son. Welcome.
I'd be happy to be death.
I think you'd be great at it, Doc. I would see. That's what I mean. Like, I love the fact that if they can get all these like fun characters like cast I'm like, I want to see Dark Shadows, but
Sure.
it's just like uh, Caleb. So, what about modern day Caleb? Who would you cast? I'm sorry.
That's a huge question, because again, it depends on what sort of character you're trying to create, like who he is, what he's doing, how old is he. So
Right.
give me a few ground rules about the kind of character he is and how old he is.
Okay, Caleb is probably, we'll say, late 20s, early 30s.
Okay.
He's, we'll say, blonde hair. I don't know what kind of eyes, but very tall, thin man. And very, we'll say, suspicious of his family and other people, strangers too.
Yeah. Uh the Malfoy kid from the Harry Potter movies.
Oh,
He's about the right age.
yes, he is.
Malfoy kid, suspicious of everybody.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Cast him.
I like that. I
Yeah.
like that a lot. Do you think, to get on Cisco a bit, where do you rank Cisco as your captain? Where's your captains?
I want this to be a whole podcast that we do. I really, either ranking the captains or whatever. But uh, uh, well, Kirk is always going to be the best.
Right,
I mean, he's the captain.
right.
Uh, uh, but after that, in terms of, okay, so here are my metrics. In terms of command ability,
Hmm.
someone that I would be okay working for.
Right.
Well, they take a while to warm up. Um, in terms of uh, wisdom, um, Cisco is tops. I think in all of that. I think here's a really good measure of a starship captain. Take any Star Trek adventure,
Right.
any episode of any series, especially one where they wake up in bed with Q, and take whatever actor that is out, take whatever character that is out, and imagine one of the other captains in their place.
Right.
Um, who is the one who would either get the job done just as well or get the job done far better?
Right.
And of the, 5, 6 major captains, Ben Cisco, Ben Cisco, Ben Cisco, Ben Cisco, and Ben Cisco.
Right. There's an episode of Deep Space Nine where Q shows up. John D. Lantis.
Oh, I'm not Picard.
Right.
Right?
Right. I love. He goes, Picard would have never hit me. He goes, I'm not Picard. I love the line. He's
It
right.
was right.
He's
Right.
not. Avery Brooks does not get enough credit for playing Benjamin Sisko, and it's look. You and I come from different eras. Okay, I came from the era where, by the time I got into Star Trek: The Next Generation, what Star Trek: The Next Generation had started really for my childhood was who's a better captain, Kirk or Picard?
Yeah.
That's what really that started in my era. And so the movie that got made was they get, they get James Tiberius Kirk, they get God, the
Patrick.
actor, yeah, sorry, and then they get Patrick Stewart,
Yeah.
and they put them in a movie together. And the movie was good. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it was awful, but where I really fell in love with Star Trek was Deep Space Nine.
Sure.
And because really, I know the Next Generation really got into the episodic, but I more think Deep Space Nine took more advantage of it than what the Next Generation did, in my view.
Yeah. I completely agree. I think that DS9, when it was going on, came under a certain amount of fire as straying from Gene's vision, and that's a key discussion point. Gene's vision was constantly changing.
Yeah.
I mean, I love Gene to death. He is, if I had a little shrine to worship at someone every day, it would be Gene Roddenberry. And I know all of the flaws. And so, and one of the flaws is that if Gene didn't come up with it, there would be one of two things. Either Gene didn't like it or Gene would claim to have come up with it. There are a lot of things like Gene Kuhn and Dorothy Fontana did a lot that kind of maybe they didn't get as much credit for as they deserved. But this is my way of saying that I think if Gene could have kind of relaxed and taken a few steps back and counted the residual checks the DS9 would have gotten him, I think the war veteran Gene Roddenberry would have come out. And I think the way that DS9 would have been rationalized by him quite accurately is it's fine that we are beyond certain things in the 24th century,
Right.
that we are evolved. And after a while, the only way that you really know that something is there is by putting something that is different behind it, by pushing at it with something that's different. And so seeing those characters tested and seeing them nevertheless come out on top. That O'Brien, never has a character been tortured like Miles O'Brien.
Yeah.
Literally.
Yeah.
Over and over again. He's been sentenced to like decades of some weird mind prison and all this other stuff. And he still just bounces right back, kind of.
Yeah.
But that I think Miles O'Brien is kind of the greatest testament to Gene's vision because of how, with scars and all, he endures. And Gene understood endurance. I mean, this is a man who, with a broken leg, got a bunch of passengers out of the middle of God knows where when his plane crashed.
Yeah.
I mean, he's literally a giant of a man. Yeah.
I think that's the thing too with DS9. It didn't just get into the really DS9 got into other things. It got into Bajorans. It got into religion. It got into shapeshifter Odo, the Dominion. Yeah. It got into so many torture, time travel. Yes, there were. I like the fact that they put Worf on there for, a time, but at the same time too, DS9 stood on its own 2 feet. It wasn't just relying on other characters from another series, where I feel at times there's TV shows that do that. It really was its own thing. And one of my favorite characters other than that is Quark. I love him.
I love Quark. Here's the thing. You could do an entire series of podcasts on DS9 called DS9 My Favorite Character Is, and just have it be a different character every week. It'd be Vic Fontaine, for God's sake. It could be my favorite character, Garrick.
Yeah, Garrick's really cool.
Have you read Andy Robinson's book, A Stitch in Time?
No, I have not, but when I watch DS9, I really look at the character of Garrick, and the Bajor, the whole aspect, or not Bajoran, I keep getting his thing wrong, but Cardassian spy Taylor. It's weird because there's a movie called Taylor of Panama, and I think honestly they're just ripping off of that character. I think that the story of Taylor of Panama is taken from Garrick.
Well, Jewel, I'll tell you, get thee to whatever you need to do and read A Stitch in Time, because Andy Robinson kept notes and did diaries as Garrick to stay in character, and he
Cool.
turned them into a novel. And this is Garrick's autobiography.
Cool.
As he's helping in the recovery of Cardassia after they retake it and liberate it with Damar, and as he's helping in the medical corps there, and so he's writing to Bashir, his future husband, and they're going back and forth, and it's not just a great Star Trek book, and a lot of Star Trek books are very underrated. It's not just a great Star Trek book; it's a great novel. It's really good, and if you like DS9, it's the perfect cherry on the cake.
Is it on Amazon?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll definitely type that in and have my wife order that for me so I can read it, because I will definitely check it out. Is to sort of put a nice bow on Caleb, okay? Where do you place this character of importance in Dark Shadows?
Not very.
Right.
But he is a wonderful bit of he is a great bit of world building evidence that the Collins family is even bigger than the canvas that the show presents. And that's one of the things I really love about the early parts of the show, when Barnabas is in the house and he's talking about all the things that happened in the past, and you just get the sense of we're just seeing this one tiny sliver of a massive, massive canvas. And so I think Caleb Collins is really the last remnant of that. When the show first started, they were referring to all sorts of relatives who,
right,
we met or saw or whatever. And Caleb is the last gasp of that. And so I love that. He's a wonderful, lovely bit of texture to the Dark Shadows story.
I think I love what you're saying. Dark Shadows has so many pieces, like you said, painting, canvas, right? And though Caleb is not the biggest piece on the board, and he's not, I'm not going to sit here and say he is, but at the same time, that little mention of that character, of that house, to me has forever stayed in my mind, because it just makes you wonder and wonder and wonder. And that little bit of wonder, right. It does. It's mind blowing. And that's what Dark Shadows really does well. It holds you so prisoner. It's like, tell me more.
Yeah.
And I think that's something Dark Shadows does better than anything.
It does it really well. If there had ever been a successful and really successful Dark Shadows comic book series, and I had been the editor of it, one of the things I would have done is I would have started a parallel series that would have specifically dealt with the slivers of time between the flashbacks and between the eras. And so Jeffrey and Caleb and even Jonah would have been crucial characters in that. The 1870 period.
Sorry.
No.
If Mark B. Perry gets this sequel series going, do you think we'll see something like that?
Yeah, I do. And I'll tell you why. It's too good an idea, and Mark Perry is too smart a man.
Yep.
I think it just depends on if he has the time.
Yep.
If the show is successful enough and runs for enough years, it probably would be in a spinoff.
Yep. I think I often look at this like, writers are best when they're left alone. When they're left to work and have that time.
Yes.
I'm gonna quote a writer, Walter B. Gibson, who wrote The Shadow, and he said, I was writing The Shadow during the Depression. I was depression proof, which was a great time to write it. Street and Smith left him alone to write The Shadow, and he was successful at it. And I think that's the best arrangement for Mark B. Perry. If he's given the time and the foundation to write Dark Shadows, we're going to have one hell of a series.
You know something that I would love to talk to you about someday on one of these. You know a lot about the Shadow.
Yes, sir.
Right?
Yes.
Okay. You know this. I know a lot about Doc Savage, his Street and Smith neighbor.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that would be a really fun discussion to have, is just to trade Shadow and Doc Savage knowledge and insights.
Who's your favorite Shadow agent?
I got to say Peter Boyle, I guess, because or Andre Gregory, because the movie is my main. The movie and like a radio show that I heard when I was a kid is my main exposure to the Shadow.
I have two. Now everyone's favorite is Harry Vincent, and I like Harry Vincent, but my favorite is Burbank. Once Burbank settles into his role and really, he's sort of operating the messages and getting messages to the Shadow, Burbank is really, really a great agent.
I don't know anything about this, and that's why you need to tell me about this. And like, who's your favorite member of the Fabulous Five of Doc Savage's crew? Right? Name one. So we can talk about it, right? Do you know one? Can you name one?
No, I don't.
Yeah. And this is great. So we both have like missing pieces, and we can put the Street and Smith puzzle together.
What? Let me ask something. I know Doc Savage had a Fortress of Solitude. I know, to me, Superman ripped off of Doc Savage.
Oh, are you kidding? Yeah, and the Shadow, Clark Kent, Clark Savage Jr., Kent Allard.
Yep. And Batman, that son of a bitch, ripped off of the Shadow. Anyway,
but all the gadgets came from Doc Savage.
Yeah.
Because Doc Savage was the gadgeteer.
Yep. So we'll probably get in trouble, but it's okay.
Will we? I don't know. And by the way, there's a slick Doc Savage reference in the Dark Shadows Daybook.
Yes, there is. And if you want to go pick up that book, and I highly recommend you do, link is going to be
for the Rondo, for God's sake.
And go vote for it in the Rondo Awards. Do that. Links will be in the description to get the Dark Shadows Daybook, which I highly recommend you do. This genius here wrote it. He's a smart man. I'm looking at you, dude. Artwork by Wallace McBride, who's not in this video, but two very great gentlemen. Patrick, first of all, dude, thank you for joining me for this.
Yeah, this was a lot of fun.
It was, and I want to thank you for giving me your time. I will contact Mark Gilman, and we will arrange a Star Wars episode.
Think about this Savage Dark Shadows thing, or Doc Shadows. Doc Shadow.
Doc Shadows. Yeah, we won't get sued for copyright at all.
We're talking about it. And like, how much money have you made off of these?
None.
Yeah, about as much as I've made off my Dark Shadows videos from 10 years ago.
I'm not in this for the money. I'm in this for the friendship, dog.
Me too. Had a long conversation. No, seriously, I had a long conversation with somebody about friendship and Dark Shadows just today.
Right. And that's the thing too. It's like when you talk, you just want to talk to people about the things you love, right?
Yeah.
And it's like Dark Shadows, the Shadow, sports, whatever. It's all well, good, and fun. That's all it is. And it's for Patrick McCray, who is always a pleasure and a gentleman. Thank you so much, sir.
You're saying host of hosts, it's good to see you.
It is too. It's good to see you too. Have a great night, Patrick.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.